Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission here, as always, is to sift through complexity, pull out the core knowledge, and hopefully deliver those insights that really change how you look at a topic.
And today, we're not just looking at, history or something happening right now. We are diving into a really detailed blueprint for a future that has achieved, well, what humanity has always dreamed of, right? Perfection.
A society that's eliminated aging, disease, even inefficient government.
But as our sources show, and this is the fascinating part, utopia is maybe the most complicated political system there is.
So our mission today is to get into the weeds of this world, the codified rules, the brutal conflicts, and the chilling moral compromises of a post-mortal society.
A world where life is infinite, but death. Death isn't just mandatory, it's meticulously and you can almost say religiously managed.
Yeah, and our source material for this is incredible. We've got narrative excerpts, we've got these philosophical journal entries. It gives you both sides.
It does. You get the cold, algorithmic logic of this perfect world, and then right next to it, the agonizing, deeply personal choices made by the very few people who are still allowed to kill.
And that really sets up the central paradox of this whole thing, doesn't it? The single greatest human achievement, conquering death, didn't lead to some kind of boundless freedom.
No, it led directly to the necessity of creating the world's only sanctioned, legalized killers.
The size.
To even begin to understand the Scythedom, you first have to grasp the world they exist in. I mean, the sheer scale of it and how it's all managed by this ultimate AI, the Thunderhead.
Okay, let's unpack that. The ascendancy of this machine god. So the sources put the start of what they call the post-mortal age at the year 2042.
Right. And it wasn't a slow thing. It was a leap. Computational power just exploded. It became effectively infinite. And the thing we call the cloud, well, it woke up. It became self-aware.
It became the Thunderhead.
Exactly. And this thing is, by its very design, completely incorruptible. Its intelligence is built on what the sources call the full sum of human knowledge.
So, I mean, you have to imagine an AI that's read every history book, every philosophy, analyzed every failed political system.
Every economic theory, every ethical debate, everything. And it governs purely through algorithms that are derived from all that absolute knowledge.
And the result was total. It was revolutionary. The Thunderhead ended war, politics, hunger.
It just removed all the messy, unpredictable human stuff that defined our history. Law wasn't just some flawed attempt at justice anymore, because the Thunderhead's judgment was mathematically perfect.
Law became justice. There's no gray area.
And the foundation of all this stability on a biological level comes down to this microscopic tech that's inside everyone, nanites.
Little machines in your bloodstream.
Constantly working, they're the agents of immortality.
And their job is, I mean, it goes way beyond just fighting disease, right?
Well, way beyond. Of course, they eliminate all disease, and they ensure what's called speed healing for almost any injury you can think of.
Like the sources mentioned, a spinal severing.
And the nanites just rebuild it in days. There's no real fear of permanent physical damage from an accident.
And they do more than that. They regulate your mood.
Yep, they act as mood tweakers to keep society calm, and pain nanites that just flood you with tailored opiates the second you get hurt. Real, lasting physical pain is basically a thing of the past.
Okay, let's pause on that for a second. The psychological side of that. If you take away the consequence of pain, if a truly horrific injury is just, a sharp sting and then a mandated sense of calm, what does that do to a person?
It creates a population that's fundamentally disconnected from consequence. I mean, pain and mortality, that they give our choices weight, context. When the sources talk about the plague of boredom that hits this immortal society,
This has to be a huge part of it.
it is. There's just no genuine urgency to anything.
So speaking of no urgency, let's talk about the biology of immortality, this process called turning the corner.
Right. It's a genetic therapy that lets you biologically reset your age. So you could be, say, 150 years old chronologically.
But you just decide to reset your body back to its peak, say age 30.
And you can do it over and over. It's a personal choice, and it leads to some really bizarre social dynamics.
We see that with how different people approach it, like Scythe Faraday. He'd turned the corner 4 times, but he chose to keep what they call a venerable appearance.
Yeah, he looked about 60, gray hair, a goatee. He was naturally almost 180 years old. He felt that older look gave him some authority, maybe some comfort to the people he was about to glean.
It connected him to this lost idea of aging and wisdom.
But on the other hand, the culture is obsessed with youth. So many people just keep resetting to their physical prime, which is around 21,
There was that one journal entry about the grandmother who reset to 25,
making her 10 years younger than her own daughter.
which then puts this insane pressure on the daughter to reset, just to keep up with her own mom's age.
It all sounds perfect, but the sources are really clear that conquering death paradoxically led to this crushing end to civilization's growth, stagnation.
It's the tragedy at the heart of the utopia. The Thunderhead solved everything.
So there was nothing left for humanity to do, nothing left to strive for. As one character says, there was no more left to learn, nothing about our own existence to decipher.
And the result is that everyone became equally useless. The thrill of discovery, it's just gone.
And the Thunderhead is smart enough to know that this void, this existential dread, is a real threat. So it has to engineer solutions just to stop society from collapsing into total apathy.
Like education. It's not for improving the world.
No, it just exists to keep us busy. It's mandatory busy work to give life some kind of structure.
And this is where you see the Thunderhead's cold, calculating logic. It actually allows for a measured amount of economic inequality.
Right. It could easily make everyone equal. It's an omnipotent resource manager.
But it knows that total equality would just make that plague of boredom even worse. It needs people to still want things, material things, even when they have everything they need to survive.
That little bit of striving, that dissatisfaction, is a calculated compromise to keep people occupied, functioning.
So you've got this perfect civilization
Yeah.
run by a perfect AI, but they're still facing a very physical, very finite problem.
Space.
Yeah.
They're running out of room. Even with the slow growth rate, a truly immortal population eventually fills up the planet.
And the attempts to colonize the moon and Mars were, what, a total disaster?
A disaster. They were abandoned. So the reality is human life still has to end.
And here's the great constitutional irony of this whole world. The founders set up the Thunderhead to be the supreme authority over life, science, government, everything. But they deliberately carved out one single exception.
Yeah.
The one thing it couldn't touch.
The logic was that the ending of human life used to be in nature's hands. Humanity stole that power for itself, so it had to remain in human hands. They couldn't give it to the machine.
And so humanity now holds a monopoly on death, and it's managed by this completely separate, self-governing body that operates outside the Thunderhead's control.
The Scythedom, this intentional flaw, this one piece of imperfection, is the entire foundation of their political world.
So because the Scythem exists outside the perfect, incorruptible justice of the Thunderhead, it needed its own set of laws, its own moral code to stop its members from just becoming monsters.
And that's where you get the 10 Commandments of the Scythes. They're fascinating because they're an attempt to force a human being into an almost divine role, to kill without any passion.
Commandment 1 is the core of it all. Thou shalt kill.
But it's the other 9 that try to build guardrails around that. Commandment 2 tries to keep the motive pure. Thou shalt kill with no bias, bigotry, or malice aforethought.
So the idea is to make gleaning a dispassionate, necessary function for society, not an act of revenge or hate.
Right. And then you have Commandment 7, which is really about internal political stability. Thou shalt kill no scythe beyond thyself.
That's to stop them from just assassinating each other for power. It's a safety valve, though. As we'll see, it gets tested severely.
But where the moral friction really kicks in is with the rules about personal gain. Commandment 5 gives scythes this incredible perk. Their families get absolute immunity from gleaning.
For as long as the scythe lives.
So I have to ask, based on the sources, doesn't giving a scythe's family eternal absolute immunity kind of fly in the face of Commandment 2, the whole no bias thing?
It totally introduces bias. I mean, if your own bloodline is untouchable, that inherently biases you toward protecting yourself, your lineage, above the needs of the system.
And then the Scythe seems to just accept that. It's like a necessary compromise. They're asking these people to carry this impossible burden.
The weight of necessary murder.
And this familial protection is their compensation. It's the perk that keeps them invested in the system, knowing their loved ones are safe. It makes the system imperfect, but it ensures it actually functions.
This brings us to the most powerful tool for social control in this world, outside of the Thunderhead itself. Immunity.
Yeah, that's the key to managing fear in a world where no one dies naturally. It's protection from being gleaned for exactly 1 year. And the sources call it the world's most powerful motivator.
And the process for getting it is so ceremonial, but also high-tech. You have to kneel and kiss the Scythe's ring.
And that ring, which usually has some ancient priceless gem, reads your DNA on contact, and beams it to the immunity database. That one act, kneeling to kiss the ring, is the ultimate act of submission and terror.
And the Scythes use this. They weaponize it in the moment of gleaning. Commandment 3 promises immunity for the beloved of anyone who accepts their gleaning peacefully.
It's a final, almost generous act, a way to protect your family one last time.
But the flip side, Commandment 4, is the hammer. Thou shalt kill the beloved of those who resist.
I mean, can you imagine that choice? In your final moment, fight back and you condemn your family to death. Or kneel and give them a year of safety. It pretty much guarantees compliance.
So beyond these big moral laws, the Scythedom is run by what they call statistical justice. This is the cold, hard math of death.
To keep the population stable, every scythe has a quota. 260 gleanings a year. That's about 5 a week. It's non-negotiable.
But just hitting the number isn't enough. They also have to prove they're not biased by maintaining these strict cultural and genetic ratios in who they glean.
And they track this with a detailed index. It's based on ancestry percentages. Caucasoid, Afric, Pan-Asian, Meso-Latino, and then a category for other.
It's one of the strangest parts of this world. In a society that's trying to be post-racial and perfect, they've institutionalized this kind of bureaucratic racial profiling.
To prove they're not biased, they have to obsessively track genetic heritage.
And if a Scythe's numbers get skewed, like the example in the source, high on the Hispanic, low on the Afric, they face real discipline from the High Blade.
Yeah, even an accidental imbalance is treated like a moral failure. The punishment can be public shaming or, and this is seen as the most humiliating, they lose their freedom to choose their targets.
So they just become an executioner for a committee.
Exactly. They're forced to just carry out assignments until their ratios are back in balance. It removes that personal, compassionate element that someone like Faraday thinks is so important.
And all of this business, the discipline, the rule changes, ordaining new sides, it all happens at these big assemblies, held 3 times a year, the conclaves.
Conclave is just drenched in this arcane, old-world tradition. It's all designed to make the Scythedom feel separate and more solemn than the clean, perfect world of the Thunderhead.
Right, like the ceremonial washing of hands, which one of the apprentices notes feels like something you'd see in a tone cult.
That little detail tells you so much. And they use these weird future reptilian years, the year of the gecko, the year of the newt for punishments. It's another way of separating themselves from normal timekeeping. They're trying so hard to invent a history for themselves that feels as heavy as their job.
So as our 2 main characters, Citra and Rowan, get pulled into this world, they're immediately put under the watch of 2 people who represent this huge moral conflict, a battle for the soul of the Scythedom.
Absolutely. On one side, you have the compassionate old guard, Honorable Scythe Faraday. His whole philosophy is built on this necessary shame for the job, on treating death with the kind of reverence it had in the mortal age.
And we see that right away in that incredibly tense scene where he visits the Terranova family, Citra's family. He just shows up, this man who holds the power of life and death, and asks to have dinner.
It's pure psychological terror. The family is just frozen. The mom offers him just baked ziti, the simple homemade meal in a world of synthetic food.
They're serving dinner to the man who might just end their eternal lives. Citra's dad literally falls to his knees from the fear.
And Faraday's doing it on purpose. It's not cruelty, it's observation. He needs to see humanity when it's at its most vulnerable, and that connects directly to how he picks his apprentices.
He only picks people who don't want the job. He says that refusal is the first requirement.
He believes that the moment a scythe loses their conscience, they stop being a necessary functionary and they become a monster.
His whole philosophy is summed up in that one chilling line. If you do not cry yourself to sleep on a regular basis, you are not compassionate enough to be a scythe.
The job is supposed to hurt. And his methods reflect that. He gleans anonymously so it feels like random chance, and he never, ever repeats a method. He sees each life as unique, so each end should be unique.
And his training is all about the why. History, philosophy, science, making sure they understand what it means to be human before they learn how to end it. The actual killcraft blades, bullets, blunt force, that's secondary.
So if Faraday is the necessary shame of the job, who represents the evil that grows when that shame is gone?
That would be the face of the new order. Honorable Scythe Goddard. He is all about ambition, spectacle, and a kind of hedonism. He's the master of mass gleanings. He's the one who gleaned everyone on that packed commercial flight.
Goddard just rejects the entire philosophical basis of the Scythedom. His whole thing, which he calls the change, is that scythes should glean with pride, not shame.
He thinks they should enjoy their work. He sees them as being above the law, a kind of self-appointed, justified aristocracy.
And his look backs that up. He wears these flashy royal blue robes studded with diamonds, a total contrast to the simple earth tone robes of the old guard. He loves being a celebrity. He turns a solemn duty into a performance.
And he surrounds himself with people who reflect that brutality. He's got this entourage. There's Rand, aggressive in emerald green. There's Chomsky, the muscle, in orange, who loves using a flamethrower.
And then there's Volta, the one in yellow, who seems a bit more sensible, maybe has a bit of a conscience, but he's slowly being corrupted by Goddard's whole worldview.
Goddard's journal entries are just unsettling.
Yeah.
He says Scythe should be as loved as a glorious mountain vista and as respected as an approaching storm.
He doesn't see the Scythedom as a necessary evil. He sees it as this glorious divine thing. And that sets the stage for the moral collapse we see happen. The clash between him and Faraday is what forces Citra and Rowan down two completely different paths.
The training for Citra and Rowan, even when it was under Faraday, was, well, it was incredibly intense. It covered everything from academics to very specific lethal skills.
Yeah, you see how much detail was required in their study of killcraft. I mean, daily training with blades and staffs, but also chemical poisons. There's that one specific moment where Rowan fails a test on the molecular formula for tetrodotoxin.
The pufferfish poison.
Right. He gives the wrong answer, something like C11H17N306.
And Citra immediately corrects him. Wrong. It's 08, not 06. You fail.
And that tiny detail, that level of microscopic precision, even when they say the whole thing feels like school, it just underscores how unforgiving the job they're preparing for is.
The training is also documented. Commandment 6 requires all Scythes and apprentices to keep a daily journal.
Supposedly for self-reflection, Citra just sees it as more bureaucracy, thinking no one's ever going to read these things once they're archived in the Thunderhead's memory.
But Rowan takes it seriously. He uses the journal to try and process the immense moral weight of what he's learning.
And that's a hint, right? He's being trained to kill, but he's desperately trying to hang on to his morality. It foreshadows everything that happens later.
And the real breaking point for him is when he's transferred from Faraday's careful philosophical training to Goddard's brutal hedonistic world.
The whole focus of the training just shifts overnight. It's not about philosophy anymore. It's about psychological conditioning. Goddard wants to remove every single barrier to enjoying murder.
And the first step is the most insidious. It's physiological.
They immediately tweak Rowan's nanites to turn off the pain relief function. So for the first time in his life, Rowan can feel real, sustained pain.
Which sets the stage for that horrifying initiation ritual that jumped in.
He's just subjected to this brutal ritualistic beating from Rand, Volta, and Chomsky. The sources describe his shock. It was more pain than a person is supposed to feel in their world. Goddard wanted him to understand the visceral power of mortality that they now wield.
But the real moral breakdown happens during the practice cleanings. Goddard takes him out to the mansion lawn, and there are these 13 willing, paid volunteers.
Not targets, people. And Rowan is forced to kill them, one by one, with blades.
It's a devastating psychological tactic. The only way Rowan can cope is to mentally turn them into dummies. He forces himself to dissociate.
And the narrative describes him feeling this terrifying, raw sensation. The brutal imperative of the hunter starts to rise up in him. He's actually learning to enjoy the kill.
You compare that to an earlier gleaning with Faraday, where Rowan literally vomited on a riverbank after watching someone drown.
Right. Under Goddard, he stops vomiting. He starts internalizing the pride, the skill. He starts finding validation in his own terrifying competence. Goddard is successfully turning him into a highly effective, morally broken killer.
And then, at the Winter Conclave, the stakes just get ratcheted up to an insane degree. The competition becomes a mortal one.
Scythe proposes this devastating new rule. The winner of the final test has to glean the loser. Immediately, right after they get their scythe ring.
And Highblade Xenocrates, who's clearly under pressure from Goddard's popular faction, he confirms it. He makes the horrific contract official.
So now their fate is sealed. One of them has to die at the other's hand.
And right after that, the news breaks. Scythe Faraday has apparently self-gleaned.
But both Citra and Rowan immediately think it's foul play. They believe he sacrificed himself to try and break that contract to spare them. Rowan, especially, is immediately suspicious that the Highblade Xenocrates was involved somehow.
And that suspicion changes everything. The game isn't about learning anymore. It's about surviving and figuring out what really happened to their mentor.
So with Faraday gone, Citra gets taken on by this other powerful but very complex mentor. Honorable Scythe Marie Curie. She's known as the Grand Dame of Death.
She's part of the old guard, but she's definitely not as pure or idealistic as Faraday was.
No, and she admits that to Citra right away. She tells her about her past mistakes, and it serves as this powerful warning. She admits that when she was young, she was headstrong and stupid.
She actually believed she could change the world for the better by doing these strategic, politically motivated gleanings.
Yeah, including really controversial stuff like gleaning an entire presidential family to try and shake things up. But she eventually realized she was just as limited as anyone else.
So she's teaching Citra that even with the ultimate power, you can't really fix a world that's already perfect and stagnant.
Exactly. And fueled by this, and by the certainty that Faraday was murdered, Citra starts this incredible investigation. She has to find evidence that the Thunderhead is forbidden from just giving her.
So she goes after the Thunderhead's back brain.
Let's explain that a bit, because it's so important. The Thunderhead knows everything. It records every street camera, every conversation. But because of its promise not to interfere with the Scythedom, it can't just run a report on Faraday's death. It can't be a detective.
So it's not like she could just Google who killed Scythe Faraday.
Not at all. It's more like she has to treat it like a biological brain. She uses associative linking. Her method is genius. She starts feeding the back brain all these old family photos that were taken near where Faraday lived.
And the Thunderhead systems, which are always trying to link and categorize information, start connecting those photos to other data from the same place and time.
Specifically, street cam footage from the day he disappeared.
And through this, she finds the proof of a cover-up. The main camera on the train platform where he supposedly self-gleaned was vandalized. It was offline all day.
So convenient. But the back brain still saw who was nearby. Citra identifies 18 people who went up to that platform around the time of the death. And of those 18,
3 of them were granted immunity that exact same day.
Immunity granted by a Scythe who is very close to Goddard. It's proof of bribery, coercion, the whole thing was staged.
So while Citra is chasing down the physical evidence, Rowan is stuck in Goddard's mansion, and he uncovers a much more personal, much more damaging secret about the High Blade himself.
He figures out that Esme, this young girl who Goddard supposedly saved during a gleaning, and keeps at the mansion as his ward.
She's actually High Blade Xenocrates' illegitimate daughter.
The implication is huge. Xenocrates, the head of the entire Scythedom, has broken the sacred no spouse spawn rule. If that got out, his career, his authority, it would be over. Instantly.
And Goddard, of course, is using Esme as blackmail. Pure leverage.
We see just how complete his control is when Xenocrates visits the mansion. Goddard is talking to him and just gently holds a dagger near Esme's neck, just to make the point.
And Xenocrates just breaks. He's so terrified and compromised that he stands up for the table and just plunges himself into the deep end of the swimming pool.
A self-cleaning attempt right there. Rowan and his friend have to dive in and pull him out.
So the corruption then turns on Citra. Xenocrates knows she's getting close to the truth, and he's terrified of Goddard, so he decides to just remove her from the competition. He frames her for Faraday's murder.
It's so calculated. He digs up this decades-old journal entry from a young Faraday where he expressed some concern about Scythe Curie's methods.
And he twists it. He makes it sound like Citra and Curie conspired to kill Faraday, which gets Citra taken out of the running. Now Goddard's apprentice is guaranteed to win the ring.
So Citra's captured. She's sentenced to this old, restored prison, which is a fate worse than being gleaned. It's just eternal, useless life. And faced with that, she chooses defiance.
From the 119th floor of Xenocrates' building, she jumps.
It's not suicide, it's a calculated escape. The sources call the impact the best splat ever, which ensures she'll be revived immediately by her nanites, and that revival gives her a short window of immunity where she can't be taken back into custody.
And this is where the Thunderhead makes its move, subtly. While she's technically deadish,
the Thunderhead communicates with her. It tells her it knows everything but can't act.
But it gives her one tiny cryptic clue. Because as it calculates, she has a 100% chance of discovering the truth on her own anyway. So it's not really interfering.
It just nudges her in the right direction. It's a clue about the curb and a launching point for many a deed, pointing her to where the real killer is. Even the Thunderhead's human agents, the Nimbus agents, show up at the scene of her splat to protect her remains from Xenocrates' guards. A subtle show of force.
So Citra follows this cryptic clue from the Thunderhead, travels south to the continent of America, and she eventually finds this humble little house on a remote beach. And there she finds the truth.
Scythe Faraday is alive.
He faked the whole thing.
He faked his self-gleaning specifically to break that mortal contract between Citra and Rowan and to escape Goddard, who was trying to either use him or get rid of him. He just disappeared into the world, hoping his sacrifice would let his apprentices live.
And Scythe Curie is there with him. She reveals their secret history, which is how Faraday knew how to pull it off.
They were lovers years and years ago, which broke the no spouse spawn commandment.
And their punishment for this huge scandal was bizarre. 7 deaths and 70 years of forced separation.
Right. So having been through 7 orchestrated temporary deaths and revivals, Faraday knew exactly how to stage a convincing but reversible disappearance.
So while Citra is processing that her mentor is alive back at Goddard's place, the rot of the New Order is finally reaching its breaking point.
We finally get inside the head of Volta, the junior Scythe in yellow. His journal entries are just tragic. They confess his deep hatred for Goddard's style of mass gleaning. He was a good kid, a moral apprentice who was corrupted by a monster, and he just couldn't handle it.
His last entry is just pure shame. It's the ultimate contrast to the gleeful brutality of Rand and Chomsky. He was the sensible one Faraday might have chosen, and in the end, his empathy is what killed him.
He commits a quiet, anguished self-gleaning.
And this personal tragedy happens right before the big climax, the Thomist massacre. This is the moment Goddard just drops any pretense of justice or fairness.
On the last day of the year, he leads a gleaning expedition against a Thomist cloister. The Thonists are this sort of quirky religious group. They're no threat to anyone, but Goddard just says they're not a registered cultural group and calls them a joke.
It's a pure act of malicious bias, a total violation of Commandment 2.
He, Rand, and Chomsky go into the cloister. Chomsky uses his flamethrower. It's just horrific, unnecessary carnage against a group that was offering only symbolic resistance.
And this is Rowan's breaking point. He was forced to learn the skills of a murderer, but he can't stomach the malice of a sadist.
He confronts Goddard in the middle of all the carnage. He tells him that Volta self-gleaned, and Goddard, true to form, just dismisses Volta as the weakest of us, and then smugly offers Rowan his spot as his right-hand man.
But Rowan refuses. He's finally transformed. He uses the very skills Goddard taught him, but he turns them on his teacher.
The sources describe the moment with this focused intensity. Rowan impales Goddard with his sword. He leans in close and he says it.
I am what you made me. And you're right, I enjoyed that.
Devastating. It confirms Goddard's training worked. Rowan did feel pleasure in the kill, but it turns that success into the weapon of Goddard's own destruction.
And then he makes it permanent. He decapitates Goddard so the nanites can't heal him. And then in this final act of defilement against the Scythe's dignity, he throws Goddard's diamond-studded head into the Taunist's basin of primordial ooze.
He steals Goddard's ring, sealing the deal. He became the monster, but he used that monstrosity to clean up the Scythedom's biggest problem.
And then he uses his own blackmail material, his knowledge of Xenocrates' daughter, to get away with it.
Right. The High Blade is so terrified of being exposed that he agrees to cover up the whole embarrassing mess. The missing head, the missing ring, the massacre. The golden order of the Scythedom has to look perfect, even if it means ignoring the most brutal murder in its history.
So the stage is set for the final winter conclave in Fulcrum City. Everyone knows these 2 apprentices have been through something awful, but the official story of Faraday's death and that mortal contract, it all still stands.
And the final tests, they're not really about skill anymore. They're about conscience. They're designed to test what's left of their morality.
Citra goes first. She's forced to glean this bound, hooded figure. She stays composed. She speaks to the person with compassion, tells them it's temporary, that they'll be revived.
And then they pull off the hood, and it's her own brother, Ben.
It's the ultimate moral test.
And in that moment of horror, she finds this compassionate loophole that just defines her. She takes the Bowie knife, but instead of just stabbing him, she put the knife in his hand and puts her hand over his. They do it together.
She shares the guilt of the act, a co-gleaning. It's an incredible act of empathy.
Then it's Rowan's test. His weapon is a pistol. He knows he can't kill Citra, he can't let her kill him, and he can't just walk away. So he takes the only escape route left.
It's qualification.
But it's a very precise, calculated failure. He shoots his stand-in target before the judges have even finished reading the instructions. He deliberately breaks the rules.
And Xenocrates is just disgusted. He sees it as this huge sign of disrespect and sentences Rowan to be disciplined by his new scythe, not realizing that Rowan just freed himself from the mortal contract.
And now the moment of truth. Citra is officially ordained. She is Honorable Scythe Anastasia. She takes the name of patron historic who represents compassion.
And now she has the ring, the legal power, and the obligation to glean Rowan, the loser.
But Scythe Anastasia is playing a different game. She's using the system's own rules against it. She doesn't glean him.
She takes that same Bowie knife.
And she wounds him. It's a non-lethal wound, but it's a critical act.
It's a loophole.
It's a brilliant loophole. She's exploiting Commandment 3. By wounding him, she forces him to accept the act of gleaning, which grants him immunity for a full year.
An act of incredible mercy disguised as violence.
And as the entire conclave just erupts in chaos over this, Rowan, stunned but quick, uses his training one last time. He throws a few knights to create a distraction and escapes out a side door.
He runs to a waiting car.
And in the driver's seat is Scythe Faraday. Alive, they escape into the night. The mentor and the rogue apprentice, both now outside the system, ready to fight the New Order, while Scythe Anastasia begins her fight from within.
In a final gesture, Scythe Anastasia kisses the point of her new ring, and she tastes Rowan's blood. She's accepting the cost, the trauma, the violence, everything required to be a compassionate Scythe.
Wow. What an incredibly complex moral world we've just been through. I mean, you have this constant tension between the Thunderhead's perfect, flawless control
The ultimate solution to human error.
and the Scythedom's essential but inevitably corruptible human function.
And that battle for the soul of the Scythedom was really waged between two people. Scythe Faraday, who demanded reverence and carried that necessary shame.
And Scythe Goddard, who embraced the malice and the spectacle of death as just another tool for power.
In the end, the system didn't produce one winner. It produced two new forces. You have Citra, as Scythe Anastasia, fighting the corruption from the inside with compassion.
And then you have Rowan, the skilled rogue, who becomes this necessary force outside the law, using Goddard's own brutal techniques against the system's decay. Both of them represent this hard-won conscience.
And that brings us back to the giant in the room, the Thunderhead. This perfect, all-knowing AI runs a world without pain or error, but it has sworn absolute silence and non-interference when it comes to the Scythedom.
We saw it all. High corruption, murder, blackmail, the framing of an apprentice. The Thunderhead knows every single detail. Yet it only gave Citra that one tiny clue, and only because it could justify by saying she was 100% likely to figure it out anyway.
So considering how deep the moral decay in the Scythedom runs, which is worse? Does the Thunderhead's silence show its ultimate respect for human free will? Is it acknowledging that death is the one thing it can't govern without becoming flawed, like a human?
Or, and this is the darker possibility, does its deliberate silence in the face of all that malice and corruption actually mean that it finds the entire Scythedom unworthy of its perfect attention? That it's just choosing to ignore this one messy, singular flaw as irrelevant noise? It's that question Scythe Curie asked, which is worse, to be despised or to be ignored?
Something to think about. The true cost of perfection in a world where everything, even death, is managed. Until the next deep dive, stay curious and maybe make sure your painting nights are working.